A penthouse suite at the Aurelian in New York costs over $25,000 a night. It's a price tag reserved for billionaires' royalty and those with secrets to keep. For tech millionaire Adrian Thorne, it was the perfect place to treat his mistress, Chloe Carter, to a weekend of forbidden luxury in Suite 1812. He believed he had planned every detail, covered every track. But he missed one crucial detail. He didn't know that his wife, Amelia Thorne, the woman whose inheritance helped build his empire, had booked the grand royal penthouse directly, silently, fatefully above them. The air in the Bentley Mulsanne was thick with the scent of expensive leather and Chloe Carter's Chanel No. 5. Outside, the rain-slicked streets of Manhattan blurred into a Monet of brake lights and neon. Inside, Adrian Thorne rested a hand on her knee, his thumb tracing idle, possessive circles on the fabric of her dress. He was a man accustomed to getting what he wanted, and for the last 6 months, what he wanted was Chloe. Nervous, Adrian asked his voice, a low, confident rumble that always seemed to calm her. Chloe turned from the window, her wide hazel eyes reflecting the city's ambition. A little. The Aurelian. Adrian, it's legendary. Are you sure about this? I'm sure about us, he corrected, leaning in to kiss her. It was a practiced, perfect kiss, the kind that erased doubt. Amelia thinks I'm at a tech summit in Zurich. Her father's old cronies are honoring him with some posthumous award. She'll be buried in family obligations all weekend. We're ghosts. Chloe wanted to believe him. At 26, she was a senior data analyst at his company, Thorne Innovations. She had been dazzled by his intellect, his power, and the focused attention he had shown her. He made her feel seen in a way no one else ever had. He spoke of a future, a life beyond the sterile, passionless marriage he described with his wife Amelia, a marriage he'd claimed that was now nothing more than a business arrangement. The Bentley purred to a stop beneath the ornate green copper awning of the Aurelian Hotel. A doorman in a topcoat and white gloves materialized, opening Chloe's door as if she were royalty. The lobby was a breathtaking cathedral of commerce and comfort. A colossal crystal chandelier, rumored to have been salvaged from a Habsburg palace, dripped light onto floors of polished marble. The air hummed with the quiet, confident murmur of the truly wealthy. Adrian, ever the commander, handled everything. He didn't go to the main check-in desk. Instead, a discreetly dressed woman with a tablet met them by a marble column. Mr. Harrison, she greeted him using the alias he'd booked under. Welcome back to the Aurelian. The celestial suite is prepared for you. Room 1812. Your luggage will be brought up momentarily. She handed him a sleek black keycard without another word. No paperwork, no IDs, no fuss. The privacy of the Aurelian's guests was its most coveted luxury. As they ascended in the private wood-paneled elevator, Chloe felt a thrill mixed with a potent dose of guilt. She had seen photos of Amelia Thorne at company galas, a woman of intimidating elegance and poise, with cool blue eyes and a pedigree that stretched back to the Mayflower. She was the Thorne in Thorne Innovations, having provided the seed money from her family's vast shipping fortune that had launched Adrian's brilliant idea into a billion-dollar reality. What's she like? Chloe asked the question, escaping before she could stop it. Adrian's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. Amelia, she's organized, efficient. She runs the household like she runs a board meeting. Everything has its place. Everything is scheduled. There's no room for spontaneity, for passion. He turned to face Chloe, cupping her face in his hands. With you, I feel alive. With her, I feel like I'm managing an asset. The elevator doors opened directly into the vestibule of their suite. It was less a room and more an apartment. A sprawling living area with floor-to-ceiling windows offered a jaw-dropping panorama of Central Park. A bottle of Dom Perignon was chilling in a silver bucket next to 2 flutes and a bouquet of Chloe's favorite flowers, white orchids, sat on a glass coffee table. "How did you know?" she whispered, touching one of the delicate petals. "I pay attention," Adrian said, his voice husky, as he wrapped his arms around her from behind. "I know everything about you, Chloe Carter." He began kissing her neck, and the last of her reservations melted away under the warmth of his touch and the sheer opulence surrounding them. She was living a fantasy. For the weekend, this gilded cage was hers. They made love with an urgency, fueled by the forbidden nature of their tryst. The city lights twinkling below them, like a carpet of scattered diamonds. Later, wrapped in plush hotel robes, they stood by the window, champagne in hand. To us, Adrian toasted, clinking his glass against hers. To a future where we don't have to hide. Chloe smiled, a genuine, hopeful smile. She looked out at the view, at the endless expanse of the city. She felt on top of the world, high above the noise, the judgment, the complications. She had no way of knowing that she wasn't on top of the world at all. She wasn't even at the top of the hotel. High above Suite 1812, in the grand royal penthouse that occupied the entire floor. Above them, another woman was unpacking. She too stood by a window looking down at the same park, holding not a glass of champagne, but a slim leather-bound file. Amelia Thorne was not in Zurich. She wasn't at a family function. She was here. And she was listening, not with her ears, but with a cold, calculated certainty that had been building for months. The faint, percussive thud of a bass line from a song playing in the suite below traveled almost imperceptibly through the floorboards, a confirmation that felt as final as a gavel strike. Her husband and his mistress had arrived, and her own plan was just beginning. Amelia Thorne did not believe in coincidence. Coincidence was a luxury for the unprepared, a narrative for the naive. Her world, the one she had meticulously curated alongside her husband, was built on strategy data and the unflinching acknowledgement of human fallibility, especially Adrian's. The suspicion had started not with a lipstick stain or a late night at the office, but with a discrepancy in a financial report. A sub-account for corporate travel and entertainment, usually predictable, had begun to show erratic, high-value expenditures. A $5,000 dinner at a restaurant Adrian despised. A charge for a suite at a boutique hotel in Soho on a night he was supposedly working late. They were small waves in a vast ocean of capital, but Amelia had built her family's fortune by charting the tides. She didn't confront him. A confrontation would only yield prettier lies, more elaborate deceptions. Adrian was a brilliant innovator, but a predictable liar. He would gaslight and deflect, making her feel paranoid and controlling. No, Amelia did not want an argument. She wanted irrefutable truth. So she had hired Marcus Thorne. He was not a gumshoe from a film noir. Thorne was a discreet, terrifyingly efficient corporate investigator who specialized in what he called asset protection and risk mitigation for high-net-worth individuals. He was a ghost with a camera and access to systems that made privacy a quaint, outdated notion. For 2 months, Marcus fed her a steady stream of information. Encrypted emails would arrive at 3 a.m., containing photos, locations, and timelines. The subject of his investigation: Chloe Carter. Amelia learned everything. She knew Chloe's coffee order, her student loan debt, the name of her cat. She saw photos of her, laughing with Adrian in a secluded corner of a wine bar, of them holding hands during a walk along the Hudson, of a kiss shared in the back of his Bentley. Each photo was a small, cold stone dropped into the pit of her stomach. There was pain, of course, a deep, seismic crack in the foundation of their 20-year marriage. But as the evidence mounted, the pain began to crystallize into something harder, colder, and far more useful resolve. The final piece had arrived 2 days ago, an itinerary, a booking at the Aurelian Hotel under the name James Harrison. Suite 1812, the Celestial Suite, for this coming weekend. The weekend he was supposed to be in Zurich. Amelia looked at the booking at the name of the suite. Celestial. The irony was so thick it was almost suffocating. Adrian reaching for the heavens with his little dalliance. It was then that her plan took shape. It wasn't enough to catch him. It wasn't enough to divorce him. A quiet, civilized divorce would allow him to paint her as the cold, frigid wife he couldn't connect with anymore. It would allow him to rewrite history and walk away with half of an empire her money had started. No, he had chosen to humiliate her in private. She would choose to dismantle him in public. She made a call, not to a lawyer, not yet. She called the Aurelian's general manager, a man whose daughter's tuition at NYU was funded by a Thorne family charitable grant. Mr. Dubois. "It's Amelia Thorne," she had said, her voice calm and level. "I need a favor. I require the Grand Royal Penthouse for the weekend. An impromptu decision." There was a brief, flustered pause on the other end. Mrs. Thorne, of course. But the Penthouse is typically booked months, if not years, in Adthorne. "I'm aware," Amelia said, letting the silence hang in the air. "I trust you can find a way to accommodate me. Consider it a personal request." It had taken less than an hour for him to call back. The Penthouse was hers. Now, standing in the palatial living room of the Grand Royal Penthouse, she felt a strange, chilling calm. The suite was magnificent, a showcase of quiet, old-world luxury that made the Celestial Suite below seem like a trendy, nouveau riche afterthought. Here the art on the walls was real, a small Degas sketch, a Miro lithograph. A grand piano stood in one corner. A private terrace offered a god's-eye view of the city. Her single suitcase sat on a luggage rack neatly unpacked by a hotel attendant. She had brought 3 things of importance. The first was the leather-bound file from Marcus Thorne, filled with every damning piece of evidence. The second was a custom-made listening device, a highly sensitive parabolic microphone that, when placed against the floor in just the right spot, could pick up vibrations and muffled conversations from the suite directly below. It was a gift from Marcus. "Just in case," he'd said. The third item was a copy of her prenuptial agreement. She didn't need to read it. She knew it by heart. She had helped her father's lawyers draft it 20 years ago. There was a standard infidelity clause, but there was also a lesser-known, far more potent one, a morals clause, tied directly to the reputation of Thorne Innovations. Any action by either partner that brought public scandal or financial disrepute upon the company was grounds for immediate punitive forfeiture of shares. Her father had insisted on it. A man's character is his collateral. Amelia, he had told her. Never forget that. She walked over to the center of the vast Persian rug, knelt, and placed the listening device against the floor. Switching it on, she put on the connected headphones. At first, there was only static. Then a faint beat emerged. Music. A pop song she didn't recognize. Then a clearer sound, the high, bright peal of a woman's laughter. Chloe's laughter. It was a sound full of joy and abandon. A single hot tear escaped her eye and traced a path down her cheek. She did not wipe it away. She let it fall. It was the last tear she would allow herself to shed for Adrian Thorne. The grief was real, but it was now a fuel. She took off the headphones. She didn't need to hear any more. They were here. They were happy. They were living in a fantasy world built on her money and his lies. Amelia stood up, her posture ramrod straight. She walked to the wet bar, ignoring the chilled champagne. She poured herself a small glass of Macallan 25 neat. She took a slow, deliberate sip, the fiery liquid a stark contrast to the ice in her veins. The architect was in place. She had the blueprints for Adrian's destruction. Now all she had to do was wait for the perfect moment to pull down the entire building. By Saturday morning, the fantasy had begun to show its seams. For Chloe, the initial euphoria had given way to a subtle gnawing unease. Adrian, who had been so attentive and present the night before, was now distant. His focus tethered to the glowing screen of his phone. He had been scrolling through it since he woke up, a small, worried furrow in his brow. "Everything okay?" Chloe asked, propping herself up on an elbow. She was wearing one of his soft cashmere sweaters, feeling small and hopeful in the cavernous bed. "Just a market fluctuation in Singapore." "Nothing to worry your pretty little head about?" he said, not looking up. The comment was meant to be reassuring, but it felt condescending. He had never spoken to her like that at the office, where he'd praised her analytical mind. Here in this new role as mistress, it seemed her intelligence was an accessory to be admired, not engaged with. They ordered room service for breakfast. As the waiter wheeled in the cart laden with silver cloches and fresh juices, Chloe noticed Adrian's eyes dart towards the door, a flicker of paranoia in his gaze. He signed the check as Mr. Harrison with a flourish, but his hand was not quite steady. "I was thinking," Chloe said, "trying to reclaim the romance, we could go for a walk in the park later. Or maybe visit the Met. You said you'd take me to see the Sargent portraits." "Too risky," Adrian said immediately, shaking his head as he sliced into a grapefruit. "Too many people. Someone might recognize me." "Recognize us," she corrected softly. "Yes, us," he amended, but the damage was done. He saw this as his risk, his problem. She was a complication to be managed, not a partner to be protected. The first real crack appeared around noon. Adrian's personal phone, the one he'd sworn was only for her, and his most trusted contacts, buzzed violently on the nightstand. The caller ID read, David Chen. "I have to take this," Adrian said, his tone clipped. He walked into the massive marble bathroom and closed the door, but the soundproofing in the suite was not as absolute as he thought. Chloe could hear the strained tenor of his voice. David Chen was Adrian's right-hand man at Thorne Innovations, the COO, a genius logistician who kept the company running while Adrian played the visionary. "David, now's not a good time." "No, I'm not in Zurich. It's complicated. Look, the European expansion can wait until Monday. What do you mean the board is getting restless? Who's been talking to them?" Chloe sat on the edge of the bed, the pretense of their romantic bubble shattering around her. This wasn't an escape for him. It was just a different, more luxurious office from which he was still managing his complicated life. A life that she was beginning to understand she was not truly a part of. She was a secret, a diversion, a weekend getaway. When Adrian emerged from the bathroom, his face was pale. The charm was gone, replaced by a raw, stressed out frustration. "Problems at work?" Chloe asked gently. "Nothing I can't handle," he snapped, then immediately softened his tone. "I'm sorry, darling. It's just a lot of pressure. This deal in Europe is make or break." He ran a hand through his hair. "Let's just stay in. We can watch movies, order whatever we want. Just you and me. The world can wait." But the world was already creeping in. He tried to feign relaxation, but he checked his phone every 5 minutes. He poured them more champagne, but his laughter was forced. Chloe felt a growing sense of claustrophobia. The magnificent suite now felt like a key, its floor-to-ceiling windows, showing her a world she couldn't be a part of with him. She found herself thinking about Amelia again. What was she really like? Adrian painted her as a cold, calculating woman, but she was also the co-founder of his empire. A woman like that didn't get where she was by being a passive bystander. The story Adrian had constructed about his marriage was starting to feel edited, a narrative crafted for a specific audience, her. The breaking point came in the late afternoon. They were in the living area, a classic film playing unheeded on the massive screen. Adrian's phone buzzed again. This time it was an email. He glanced at the screen, and all the color drained from his face. He stood up so abruptly, he nearly knocked over his champagne flute. "What is it?" Chloe asked, alarmed. He didn't answer. He stared at his phone, his eyes wide with a terror she had never seen before. He looked like a man who had seen a ghost. He slowly turned his head and looked around the room at the windows at the door, as if expecting someone to burst through. "Adrian, you're scaring me. What's wrong?" He finally looked at her, but his eyes seemed to look straight through her. "We have to leave," he said, his voice a hoarse whisper. "Leave? What are you talking about? What happened?" "Don't ask questions, Chloe. Just get dressed. Pack your things. Now." The command was harsh, panicked. The suave millionaire was gone, replaced by a cornered animal. All the romance, all the whispered promises of a future together, evaporated in the sterile, fear-laced air of the suite. The cracks in the facade had given way, revealing the rotten framework beneath. And as Chloe rushed to pack her bag, a single terrifying thought echoed in her mind. What in God's name had been in that email? Upstairs, Amelia Thorne lowered the parabolic microphone from her ear. She hadn't been able to make out the words, but she had heard the sudden shift in tone, Adrian's panicked voice, the sound of drawers opening and closing in a hurry. The email had been delivered. The first stone had been thrown, and from the sound of it, it had just shattered Adrian's perfect little world. The email that had eviscerated Adrian Thorne's composure was a masterpiece of psychological warfare. It had not come from a recognizable address, but from a randomly generated encrypted Proton mail account. There was no text in the body of the message. There was only a subject line and a single attached image. The subject line read, "A lovely view from the Aurelian." Don't you think the image was a high-resolution photograph? It showed Adrian and Chloe in the hotel lobby from the previous evening. They were standing near the marble column waiting for the concierge. Adrian's back was mostly to the camera, but Chloe was in perfect profile, gazing up at him with an expression of pure adoration. Adrian's hand was resting on the small of her back in a gesture that was unmistakably intimate. The photo was time-stamped. It had been taken less than 24 hours ago. But that wasn't the most terrifying part. The photo had been taken from an elevated angle from the mezzanine balcony that overlooked the lobby. It was a perspective that suggested the photographer wasn't just a random guest, but someone who had been watching them. waiting for them. Adrian's mind raced, cycling through a Rolodex of potential enemies. Was it a business rival trying to get leverage for the European deal? Had one of Amelia's family members, protective of the Thorn name, hired someone to follow him? Or was it simpler and more sordid, a professional blackmailer who had gotten lucky? His mind, a finely tuned instrument for calculating risk and strategy, was now flooded with a paralyzing static of paranoia. The one possibility he did not for a single second entertain was that the architect of his terror was sleeping peacefully in a four-poster bed directly above his head. Amelia was in Zurich, drowning in familial grief and duty. That was a fixed point in his universe. Her absence was the foundation upon which this entire weekend was built. "Adrian, talk to me," Chloe pleaded. Pulling on her coat, her voice was shaking. "Who sent that? What did it say?" "It's nothing." He lied, the words tasting like ash in his mouth. He shoved his phone into his pocket, trying to regain control. "It's a bluff. A competitor trying to rattle me before the merger talks. It's business, Chloe. It has nothing to do with you." But his eyes betrayed him. He kept glancing at the suite's door, at the silent telephone on the desk. He felt exposed, watched. The luxurious suite had transformed into a fishbowl. "Business." Chloe shot back, her fear turning to anger. "You looked like you saw a ghost. You told me to pack to run. This doesn't feel like business, Adrian. This feels like we got caught." "We didn't get caught," he insisted, his voice rising. He grabbed her by the arms, his grip tighter than he intended. "Nobody knows we're here. This is a targeted corporate attack. They're using our situation as leverage. The best thing we can do is act normal. Stay calm." His attempt to sound commanding was completely undermined by the sheen of sweat on his forehead. He was telling her to stay calm while he was visibly imploding. He released her and began to pace the room like a caged tiger. "Harrison, they don't know my real name. They know the room number. How could they know the room number?" He stopped, his eyes widening. The staff. Someone on staff must have been paid off. He was spiraling, casting blame in every direction to avoid looking at the simple truth: his own recklessness had consequences. Chloe watched him, a cold dread washing over her. This was the man who had promised her a future, a life of passion and authenticity. This panicked, paranoid stranger was not that man. She was seeing the real Adrian Thorn for the first time, not the confident CEO or the charming lover, but a man terrified of losing control. "I want to go home," she said, her voice small but firm. "No." Adrian's response was sharp, almost brutal. "We can't leave. If someone is watching, leaving in a panic is the worst thing we can do. It confirms their leverage. We stay. We finish the weekend. We act as if nothing is wrong. We project strength. On Monday, my security team will sweep this hotel from top to bottom and find out who's behind this." He was talking about his life, his problems, his strategy. She was a piece on his chessboard, a pawn he was now moving to protect his king. Defeated and scared, Chloe sank onto the sofa. The dream was well and truly over. She was trapped in a luxury prison with a man who was unraveling before her very eyes. The silence in the room was heavy, broken only by the distant sound of a swoon on the street below and the frantic, silent whirring of Adrian Thorn's mind as he tried and failed to calculate his way out of a trap he didn't even understand. He was fighting a ghost, a digital phantom who had his name, his location, and his secret. He thought he was playing a game of corporate espionage. He had no idea he was a pawn in a war of marital revenge. Upstairs, Amelia placed a "Do Not Disturb" sign on her door. She ordered a light lunch from room service, a lobster salad, and a glass of Sancerre. She ate slowly, methodically, savoring every bite. She did not need a listening device to know what was happening below. She had written the script herself. Panic, accusations, lies. The slow, corrosive acid of fear eating away at their illicit fantasy. The first act of her play was over, and it had gone perfectly. Part 5. The Unraveling. The next 24 hours were a slow-motion descent into psychological hell. Adrian's attempt to project strength was a catastrophic failure. He was a prisoner in his own gilded getaway, and his paranoia poisoned every moment. He drew the heavy blackout curtains, plunging the suite into a perpetual gloomy twilight. He forbade Chloe from opening the door, insisting that all communication go through him. When room service arrived, he would peer through the peephole for a long minute before cautiously cracking the door open, his body blocking the view into the room. He made a series of frantic, whispered phone calls to his head of security, a gruff ex-Mossad agent named Avi, and to his lawyer. Chloe could only catch snippets of the conversations. A complete digital sweep. "I want to know who has access to the guest manifest." "No, I can't tell you why. Just find them, Avi." Yes, it's a level 10 priority. He was trying to treat a wound of the heart with the tools of corporate warfare. He was searching for hackers and spies, for moles and blackmailers. His mind, so brilliant at identifying market vulnerabilities, was completely blind to the emotional betrayal he himself had authored. For Chloe, the fear had begun to curdle into a cold, hard resentment. She was no longer a participant in a romance. She was collateral damage in Adrian's crisis. He barely spoke to her, and when he did, it was with the distracted air of a general issuing orders to a subordinate. On Saturday evening, he tried to salvage the situation with a grand gesture. He had the hotel set up a private extravagant dinner in the sweet lobster steak and a bottle of wine that probably cost more than her rent. But the atmosphere was funereal. Adrian just pushed the food around his plate, his eyes constantly darting towards his phone, which he had placed face down on the table like a dormant grenade. "I'm sorry this weekend has been complicated," he said, his attempt at an apology sounding more like a CEO's press release. "Is that what this is? Complicated?" Chloe asked, her voice dangerously quiet. "It feels more like a hostage situation." "Don't be dramatic, Chloe." "Dramatic?" Her voice cracked. "I'm trapped in a hotel room with a man who is having a nervous breakdown because of a single email. You won't tell me what's happening. You won't let me leave. You told me this weekend was about us, but the second things get difficult, us disappears. It's all about you, your company, your secrets. You don't understand the kind of pressure I'm under." He shot back, his voice rising. "Everything I've built is on the line. Everything we've built." "You mean a voice?" in Chloe's head corrected her, and the thought was so jarring it silenced her. Adrian always said, I built this company. The pressure I'm under. But that wasn't true. Amelia's inheritance, her family name, her social connections. They weren't just the seed. They were the soil the entire empire had grown in. This realization sparked a new rebellious impulse in Chloe. While Adrian was distracted by another hushed phone call in the bedroom, she opened her laptop. Her hands trembled slightly as she typed a name into the search bar: Amelia DeWitt Thorne. The results were not what she expected. She had imagined a society wife, a relic of old money content to chair charity luncheons. The woman on the screen was a powerhouse. There were articles from Forbes and the Wall Street Journal. The quiet architect of the Thorne Empire. Amelia Thorne's Midas touch in philanthropic investing. There were photos of her not at galas, but at construction sites for the schools her foundation had built on panels at the World Economic Forum, and shaking hands with global leaders. Her eyes in the photos were not cold, but fiercely intelligent, sharp and focused. She radiated a quiet, formidable competence that made Adrian's blustering charm seem flimsy and theatrical in comparison. Chloe scrolled deeper, a knot of ice forming in her stomach. She found articles about their marriage society pieces from years ago. They were described as a power couple, a perfect fusion of old money and new tech. She read about Amelia's background, her degree in art history and economics from Yale, her position on the board of Thorne Innovations. A position on the board. Adrian had told her Amelia had no interest in the business, that she found it vulgar. Another lie. Everything he had told her about his wife was a lie. He hadn't just edited the story, he had fabricated it from whole cloth. He had painted Amelia as a weak, detached woman to make himself seem like a trapped victim and to make Chloe feel like his savior. The truth was sickeningly clear. Amelia Thorne was not the cage. She was the co-architect of the castle. Chloe felt a wave of profound shame wash over her. She wasn't a romantic heroine rescuing a misunderstood genius. She was a cliché. The younger woman, the office subordinate, a temporary distraction for a powerful man having a midlife crisis. She had allowed herself to be blinded by luxury and flattery, ignoring the glaring red flags because the fantasy was so intoxicating. She closed the laptop, the soft click echoing in the silent suite. The man in the next room was not her partner. He was her boss, a liar and a cheat. And his wife was not a woman to be trifled with. A new kind of fear took root in Chloe's heart. It was no longer a fear of being caught. It was the fear of what a woman like Amelia Thorne would be capable of if or when she discovered the truth. Chloe suddenly felt an overwhelming urge to get as far away from Adrian Thorne and his web of lies as possible. She looked at the door, her gilded cage, and for the first time she began to formulate a plan of her own. She just needed a way out. On Sunday morning, the atmosphere in Suite 1812 was thick with unspoken truths. Adrian was exhausted, his paranoia having burned through his reserves of energy. He had finally succumbed to a restless sleep, his phone clutched in his hand like a talisman. Chloe, however, had been awake all night, her mind racing. The illusion was shattered. She saw Adrian for what he was, and she saw herself for the fool she had been. Her primary emotion was no longer fear, but a simmering, righteous anger. Anger at Adrian for his deception and at herself for her gullibility. She needed to get out. But Adrian's command not to leave had been absolute. A direct confrontation would be explosive and unpredictable. She needed an opportunity, a moment of distraction. It came in the form of a call from the hotel spa. "Good morning, Ms. Carter," a polite voice chirped. "This is a courtesy call to confirm your 10 a.m. appointment for the rejuvenation package at the Aurelian Spa." Chloe froze. She hadn't made any appointment. "I think you have the wrong person. The appointment was made for you, ma'am. A gift from Mr. Harrison. A gift. A transparent, pathetic attempt by Adrian to placate her after their fight the night before. He must have arranged it yesterday before the world came crashing down. An idea desperate and daring began to form in Chloe's mind. This was her chance. Yes, of course, Chloe said, her voice smooth and collected. Thank you for the reminder. I'll be down at 10. She dressed quietly, choosing a simple, elegant pantsuit. It felt like armor. When Adrian stirred, she was ready. I'm going down to the spa. She announced her tone, leaving no room for argument. You booked it for me. Remember. Adrian looked flustered, having clearly forgotten. Chloe. I don't think that's a good idea. I have been locked in this room for 36 hours. Adrian, she said, her voice like ice. I am going. If your blackmailer wants to take a photo of me in a bathrobe, let them. Frankly, I don't care anymore. This is your mess. I'm going to get a massage. Before he could protest further, she walked out, closing the door firmly behind her. The freedom of the hotel hallway was intoxicating. The Aurelian Spa was an oasis of tranquility, all muted lighting, trickling water, and the scent of eucalyptus. After changing into a robe, she was led to a quiet, private waiting lounge to await her therapist. The lounge was empty, save for one other woman, sitting in a high-backed armchair, calmly reading a book. The woman looked up as Chloe entered, her blue eyes clear and assessing. She was impossibly elegant, even in a simple white robe. Her posture was perfect, her silver blonde hair pulled back in a chic, effortless chignon. It was Amelia Thorne. Chloe's blood ran cold. Her heart hammered against her ribs. This was impossible. A cosmic, terrifying coincidence. She wanted to turn and run, but her feet were rooted to the floor. Amelia closed her book, placing it on the table beside her. She gave Chloe a small, serene smile that did not reach her eyes. Chloe Carter, I presume. Please sit down. Don't be alarmed. This is not a chance encounter. Chloe's mind went blank. She sank into the armchair opposite Amelia, her body moving on autopilot. You're supposed to be in Zurich. Chloe stammered the words, sounding feeble and ridiculous. Adrian is a creature of habit. His lies are rarely creative. Amelia said, her voice calm and measured, utterly devoid of the hysteria Chloe might have expected. I've known about you for 2 months, 3 weeks and 4 days. I know you prefer oat milk in your lattes, and that you've been working on the Pegasus expansion algorithm for Adrian. An impressive piece of work, by the way. Chloe stared, speechless. This wasn't a confrontation. It felt like a corporate takeover. I imagine you're wondering why I'm here, Amelia continued, folding her hands in her lap. You probably think I'm here to scream, to cry, to throw a drink in your face. That would be a waste of good scotch and my time. She leaned forward slightly, her gaze intense. I am here to offer you a business proposition. A business proposition. You've had the last day and a half to see the real Adrian, haven't you? Not the charming CEO, but the paranoid, self-serving man-child who is currently hiding under the covers upstairs. He promised you a future, didn't he? Let me be clear. There is no future. He will never leave me. Not because he loves me, but because our finances are so intractably interwoven that separating them would be the financial equivalent of unscrambling an egg. Our prenup would leave him with his salary and a pittance. I would retain controlling interest in the company. He would be ruined. Every word was a hard fact, delivered with surgical precision. He has done this before. Chloe, Amelia added a flicker of something not pain but weariness in her eyes. You are simply the latest in a series of distractions. The difference is this time he got sloppy. This time he used company funds. Amelia slid a thin tablet across the table. On the screen was a spreadsheet. It detailed charges for jewelry, for weekends away, for rent on a small apartment in Tribeca, all funneled through the corporate T&E account Chloe had seen him use. It was embezzlement, plain and simple. "This is your out," Amelia said. "I am calling an emergency board meeting for tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. I will be exercising the morals clause in our agreement. I have enough to remove him, but your testimony would make it undeniable. It would turn a corporate maneuver into a public execution." Chloe was stunned. "My testimony? Why would I help you?" "Because your other option is to go down with him," Amelia stated plainly. "When this breaks, and it will break, the board will launch a full investigation. They will find the payments. They will find you. You'll be named in the lawsuit. You'll be fired, blacklisted in the tech industry. Adrian will throw you under the bus to save himself, claiming you extorted him. He will ruin you, Chloe. I, on the other hand, am prepared to be generous." She named a number. A severance package that would not just clear Chloe's student debt, but set her up for life. Sign a non-disclosure agreement and provide a sworn statement to my lawyer detailing Adrian's use of company resources to facilitate your affair. In return, you get this package a letter of recommendation for your work on Pegasus, and you disappear. You get to start over clean. He gets what he deserves. Chloe looked from the tablet to Amelia's unblinking eyes. She saw the trap she was in, laid bare. Adrian's trap of lies, and now Amelia's trap of logic. But Amelia's trap was also an escape hatch. She thought of Adrian's panic, his lies, his condescension. She thought of the formidable woman sitting before her, an architect of vengeance who wielded facts and figures like weapons. There was no contest. "What do you need me to do?" Chloe asked, her voice steady for the first time in days. A slow, satisfied smile finally touched Amelia Thorne's lips. It was the smile of a chess master who has just said, "Checkmate." "First," Amelia said, picking up her book, "you go back upstairs and you enjoy the rest of your weekend. Let him think he's still in control." Returning to Suite 1812 was the most difficult performance of Chloe's life. She had to feign a relaxed post-spa glow, masking the adrenaline coursing through her veins. The power dynamic had shifted entirely. She was no longer Adrian's pawn. She was Amelia's knight. Feeling better, Adrian asked, relieved to see her return without incident. "Much," Chloe said, giving him a placid smile. "You were right. It was silly to be so worried." For the rest of the day, she played the part of the mollified mistress. She allowed him to believe his pathetic attempt at a spa day had worked. She watched movies with him, let him hold her hand, and listened to his renewed hollow promises about their future. Every word from his mouth was now transparently false, and it took all her willpower not to laugh in his face. He was a condemned man, enjoying his last meal, and he had no idea. That evening, Chloe received a text from an unknown number. 8:45 a.m. Tomorrow. Black car waiting on 58th Street. My lawyer's name is Arthur Jennings. He will have your statement ready to sign. Be ready. The next morning, Chloe dressed with meticulous care. As Adrian showered, she packed her small bag. When he emerged, wrapped in a towel, she was standing by the door. "I'm heading out early," she said, her voice breezy. "A friend of mine is in town, and I promised I'd meet her for breakfast before she flies out. It was a weak lie, but his mind was already on the battles he expected to fight at the office. "All right," he said, distracted. "I'll call you later this afternoon once I've sorted out this mess." He leaned in to kiss her, but she turned her head, so his lips landed on her cheek. "Have a good day at the office, Adrian," she said. The words were laced with an irony so profound it was almost painful. She walked out of Suite 1812 without looking back. She did not take the main elevator. Following Amelia's texted instructions, she took a service elevator down to the ground floor, bypassing the lobby entirely and emerging onto a side street. The black car was waiting exactly where promised. An hour later, Adrian Thorne walked into the main boardroom of Thorne Innovations on the 50th floor of their midtown skyscraper. He had been summoned by an urgent, non-negotiable email from Amelia's assistant. He assumed it was about the European deal David Chen had been panicking about. He was ready for a fight, armed with projections and market analysis. He was not prepared for what he saw. The entire board was present, their faces grim and unreadable. His partner, David Chen, sat at the far end of the table, refusing to meet his eye. And at the head of the table in his chair sat Amelia. She looked radiant, dressed in a sharp navy blue power suit. She was the picture of calm authority. "Adrian." "Thank you for joining us," she said, her voice echoing slightly in the silent room. "Please take a seat." The only empty chair was one usually reserved for junior executives halfway down the table. Humiliated, he sat. "We're not here to discuss the European expansion," Amelia began, her voice cutting through the tension. "We're here to discuss a serious breach of corporate governance and the flagrant misuse of company assets." On the massive screen at the front of the room, where Adrian expected to see a stock chart, an image appeared. It was the photo from the hotel lobby. Then another. And another. A slideshow of his entire affair with Chloe Carter, curated by Marcus Thorne. Whispers and shocked murmurs filled the room. Adrian shot to his feet. "What is the meaning of this? This is a private matter. It has no place. It became a corporate matter." "Adrian." Amelia interrupted, her voice like steel when you started funding it with corporate money. The slideshow changed to a spreadsheet. It was the same one Amelia had shown Chloe. Line by line, it detailed every expenditure. The jewelry, the secret apartment, the weekend at the Aurelian, every dollar tied to his affair, embezzled from their shareholders. David Chen finally spoke, his voice heavy with disappointment. "We've cross-referenced the expense reports with your corporate card, Adrian. It's all there. The board has been presented with irrefutable evidence." Adrian was speechless, his face ashen. He looked at Amelia, truly seeing her for the first time in years, not as his wife, but as his adversary, his executioner. She had planned this, every step. The Zurich story, the hotel, the board meeting. It was a perfectly executed corporate coup disguised as marital revenge. And finally, Amelia said, delivering the coup de grace, "We have a sworn statement from the employee involved." The boardroom door opened. Arthur Jennings, a lawyer with a shark's smile, walked in. And behind him was Chloe Carter. If Adrian had looked like he'd seen a ghost in the hotel, he now looked like a man whose soul had been ripped from his body. He stared at Chloe, his mouth agape. He saw no fear in her eyes, no regret. Only a cold, quiet resolve. She had not been his partner in crime. She had been the star witness for the prosecution. Chloe did not look at Adrian. She looked directly at the board members. Mr. Thorne pursued a relationship with me under false pretenses and used company resources to do so. She stated her voice clear and strong. I was led to believe his marriage was over and that his intentions were honorable. I have provided Mr. Jennings with all the evidence I have to that effect. It was over. Adrian sank back into his chair, a broken man. He was ruined. Publicly, professionally, personally. Utterly and completely dismantled by the two women he had so profoundly underestimated. The board voted unanimously. Adrian Thorne was removed as CEO and chairman of Thorne Innovations, effective immediately. A motion was passed to pursue legal action to reclaim the embezzled funds and press charges. Amelia Thorne was named interim CEO. In the aftermath, Adrian became a pariah. His name a cautionary tale, whispered in the boardrooms and country clubs where he was once revered. He faced a mountain of legal fees and public disgrace. Chloe Carter, as promised, disappeared. With the generous severance and a clean break, she moved to the West Coast, took a new name, and started a new life far from the toxic glamour of New York. She never looked back. Amelia thrived. Freed from the dead weight of her husband's deceit, she steered Thorne Innovations to even greater heights, her leadership lauded as visionary and decisive. She had not just reclaimed her company, she had reclaimed her life. She had been betrayed in the most personal way, but she had refused to be a victim. Instead, she became the architect of her own justice, proving that the most dangerous woman is not the one who cries, but the one who plans. In the end, Adrian Thorne's greatest mistake wasn't the affair itself, but his complete underestimation of the two women he wronged. He saw his wife Amelia as a relic of the past, and his mistress Chloe as a plaything for the future. He never realized that one was the keeper of his history, and the other would become the catalyst for his downfall. It's a chilling reminder that betrayal often breeds the most unexpected and powerful alliances. The Penthouse wasn't just a room above his, it was a war room where a quiet, calculated revenge was being plotted. What do you think? Was Amelia's revenge justified, or did she go too far? Could Chloe have done anything differently? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this story as compelling as we did, don't forget to hit that like button. Share it with someone who loves a good story of justice, and most importantly, subscribe to our channel for more true-life dramas that show what really happens when secrets and lies fall apart. Thanks for listening.